We recommend this product be installed by a competent gunsmith.
Modification of your firearm may nullify the warranty of the firearm's manufacturer.
No liability is expressed or implied for damage or injury which may occur from improper use or installation of this product.
You are responsible for the safe handling, legalities, and use of your firearm.
Warning: always wear safety glasses when working on firearms. You picked up the Apex Heavy Duty Striker for your FN-509 pistol. Now let's review the product so you know what you've got in your hand, and we'll go through the installation process. The new Apex Heavy Duty Striker for the FN-509 pistol works in all FN-509 variants, FNS Compact, and FNS variant pistols, so you're good across the board. Our striker is machined from a billet of stainless steel and is heat treated for durability. When you install our striker into your pistol, you're going to use the factory components when you put it back together. Now let me walk you through the installation process. You're going to find this is pretty simple to do. When installing the Apex Heavy Duty Striker, you're going to have to use the following factory components: the spring stop pin, striker return spring, striker spring guide, and of course the factory striker spring itself. The only tool you really need for installation is a 3/32 or equivalent size pin punch. It would be really nice to have a dental pick or a toothpick on hand for dealing with the striker spring pin. With the slide removed from the frame, I've removed the barrel and the recoil assembly. Now I'm going to take the back plate off the slide and begin the disassembly process. I'll come in here with my pin punch into the gap between the slide back plate and the spring stop with the spring guide. I'll press forward against spring tension and push my pin in, then I'll use my thumb and slide the back plate off. Remember, the spring's under tension, so once you get that back plate off, put your thumb over the end, pull the pin off, and then you can gently relieve tension. With the striker spring detensioned, I can take the striker spring guide and the striker spring out and set them aside. To remove the striker, we have to remove the striker block itself. So we're going to put a little bit of tension on the striker, just pressing forward ever so slightly. I'll press the striker block in to tension it, and then I can relieve the pressure on the striker itself. I'll pull the striker out where the back tab is just outside where the back plate goes. Then I should be able to relieve tension from the striker block. And now the striker block can be pulled from the slide, and its spring should come out as well. From here, I can pull the striker all the way out of the slide and continue disassembly. With the striker out of the slide, I still need to make sure the striker return spring is out. All I have to do is lift the slide, and that spring should pop right out. With the striker out of the slide, I need to remove the spring stop and the spring stop pin. I'll take the striker, I'll roll it up on its edge, and sometimes that pin will fall right out. If it doesn't, I'll use my dental pick or toothpick. Then I'll tap the striker on its back and dump out the spring stop itself. Before we go to install the Apex Heavy Duty Striker, I want to show you the differences between the factory component and the Apex component. You'll notice the Apex component is laser engraved with Apex on the side. Before we can install the Heavy Duty Striker into your slide, we have to install the spring stop and spring stop pin into the striker itself. You'll notice a slot on the top and bottom of the striker itself that has to align with the hole on the spring stop, and then the pin will go through. I'll walk you through that process now. This is a relatively simple installation, but it can be a bit tricky. What I do is I need to align the hole on the striker stop with the hole in the striker itself. You would think if you drop it in perfectly straight it would align, but I found it almost always doesn't do that. So what I do is I rotate it roughly 45 degrees over, and I'll drop it into the back of the striker and tap it on the table a couple times to make sure it's down. If you can't find it, look inside, you can see through the window that it's not all the way down. You can take your toothpick or your dental pick and you can kind of move it around until it falls into position. Then rotate down and look through the hole and see if the hole is aligned. In this case, my hole is perfectly aligned for me to put the pin into. I'll take my spring stop pin and I'll install it from either side. It should go all the way through. Once it's there, I'll make sure I leave the striker laid on its side so the pin doesn't come out. Now that I've reassembled the striker, I'm going to put the striker return spring on the tip of the striker. And then I will slide it into the slide all the way into position. Now remember, keep the striker on its side so that pin doesn't come falling out of the striker. I'll go in roughly halfway until the back of the striker is just outside the back of the slide. Now I'll need to put in my striker block. Before you install the striker block, you need to put the striker block spring into the striker block itself. When it's installed in the gun, the striker block spring goes away from the striker. When you go to put the striker block in, you'll want the striker right where it is now, where the front of this ring is right at the back of the slide. That's the perfect orientation to put your striker block back in. From here, I'll take my striker block with the spring facing away from the striker. I'll drop it in the hole in the slide and push it down under spring tension past the striker. Then I'll push the striker in to capture the striker block, and I may have to reorient the rotation of the striker, and I can push in. It'll stop right about there, and that's exactly where we want it. Next, we're going to reinstall the striker spring and guide. I'll take the striker spring with the guide already on the end. I'll put it into my striker. I'll push it down. I'll put a little bit of tension on the end, and then I will take my pin punch and I'll press on the striker block, and that lets the striker go all the way forward. Once it's as far forward as it'll go, I'll release the striker block, and then I can release tension on the back here. Now all we have to do is reinstall the back plate. To install the back plate on the slide, I'm going to compress the striker spring until the guide is just below the slide. I'll take the back plate, I'll put it in there in the slots to capture the spring, pull my finger out, and then I can snap that into position. Now we're fully assembled. With our heavy-duty striker installed, we're going to do a functions check. I'll push the striker forward first, and as long as it doesn't move and the firing pin doesn't push through the breech, we're good. I'll press the striker block down, which will allow the striker to move forward. I'll push the striker forward, and you can see the firing pin protrudes through the breech. If I pull it back, though, behind the striker block will pop up, and again, if I push forward, it doesn't protrude through the breech. This is normal operation. With the Apex heavy-duty striker installed and function checked, we're ready to reassemble your pistol and take it to the range. As you can see, the installation process is pretty straightforward, but if you lose any components or have any problems, feel free to contact our customer service department. We'll be happy to help you out.